Commissioner, very good morning to you. Welcome back.
Good morning, Ian, and thank you for inviting me in.
Not at all. Well, hopefully we're going to get some really, really interesting calls this morning. I'm going to let the callers interview you rather than me. Let's go to Ramsey in Maida Vale. Hello, Ramsey. What's your question to the Commissioner?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Ramsey.
Hi, my question is to the Commissioner is, what is the police doing to improve road safety?
Well, first of all, we have a traffic department, and we've got quite a few officers in there. Secondly, you might have seen some of our work that we've done over the last 18 months around cyclist safety, which has been aimed at two things. First of all, making sure that cyclists are kept safe, but also making sure their behaviour is good too, because sometimes...
what sort of budget has been dedicated toward increasing road safety? Because there is going to be cuts in 2016, which means more austerity.
Yep, and I'm afraid I can't guarantee anything at the moment. We'll do our best to prioritise everything, but I'm afraid, road safety is just one of the things. We've got counter-terrorism, we've got investigation of serious sexual offences, which Ian alluded to at the beginning, and we've got to patrol the streets, and we've got to have detectives. So it'll be one of the things that we treat as a priority.
And also, is there partnership agency in working with the police to improve this, or is it just the police who's doing it?
Well, we work with two big partners really in London. One is TfL, and they're a really big partner. They invest in the police, so they actually pay for about 1,000 officers who patrol around the buses and around our major roads. Secondly, obviously, we work with the local authorities. There's probably, as you know, three things that help to improve road safety. So one is to keep speed under control, two is car design, and three is obviously construction and use of vehicles.
You just said that you want to prioritise everything. That's clearly impossible. The whole point of prioritising is that you can't prioritise everything. So when you look at the budget that you're going to have to work with over the next 12 months, 24 months, what stands out to you as the one thing that you really can't cut? Well,
the first thing to me is obviously patrol and response. So we've got to patrol the streets, we've got to be out there, we've got to give people reassurance. And when people dial 999, they better be sure that a police officer turns up if there's an emergency. So those are the things that are the bedrock. Clearly, community policing. People want to see officers around and know them as a person, not just as a uniform going past in a car. But the reason I said there's lots of priorities, Ian, is because there are. If there's a murder, you expect detectives to come and resolve it. In London, we're very good at that. 95% of the murders are detected. If you complain about a sexual offence, you expect our detectives to come and sort that out. Cybercrime. There are many things to do. We are going to have to prioritise. The prioritisation will probably happen by around Christmas, because it's only around November that we will get to know exactly how much less money we've got.
Do you think there needs to be a big public debate about this? Because I'm not sure that debate is happening at the moment. That we all know that your budgets are being cut, that police forces around the country's budgets are being cut. But I don't see this big public debate about what the public really want you to do and whether you think that the public's priorities are the correct ones.
In a way, I think you've seen the debate start by some pronouncements by some chief constables. I think what they're saying in some of the things about what they're worried they cannot still do in the future is because they're concerned. They're not sure how to cope with the level of cuts. I'm not sure what has landed with people is that we're talking around 40% cuts. This is a very significant amount of money. So you're getting chiefs trying to work out what can't we do and what can we do.
Well, a few of these issues I can see already coming in on the board here. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you'd like to put a question to the Commissioner. I should have said at the beginning, you can watch us on the LBC website as well if you really want to see what we look like. lbc.co.uk. Mark's in Tunbridge Wells. Mark, what would you like to ask?
Oh, good morning. I'd just like to ask if someone's going to trespass and cause me a nuisance, would the officer just stand there and watch them do it because they're black and Arab? Would he just stand and do the same thing?
Right, sounds as though, Mark, you're talking about some particular circumstances. So it'd be difficult to know unless I know exactly what has happened. But it depends, because clearly civil trespass is not a criminal offence. But there can be aggravating circumstances where the police will get involved. So I need to know more circumstances before I'd be clear.
Well, you seem to have lots of armed police at the Houses of Parliament and Downing Street, but actually our country, the entry, you turn a blind eye because they're black and Arab. What's that about?
I'm not sure what you mean, Mark. If you're talking about people coming in through Calais, is that your point?
Well, that's the point I'm making, that the police, I was over there and watch when I'm working over there, just stand and watch and let people get on the back of my lorry, and because they're claiming a sign, but they're in a safe country. Whereas if you did that over here, when the sun had the battle of Wapping, and
Well, Mark, I'm responsible for quite a lot in London, but I can't account really for what the French police are doing. Clearly, that's a difficult situation. I know the French are trying to resolve it. It's not happening here. I can't really give you a straight answer. I can only give you an answer about the law in the UK.
Is there a knock-on effect in your area from the crisis in Calais, where you're having to apprehend people who are coming into London illegally?
There's no doubt that over the last few years there's been, as we know, a lot of illegal migration. And what it means is that when we catch them, we hand them over to the UKBA, the border agency, and it's their task to then work out have they got what's their migration status. Our only concern is generally when they commit crime. We have the UKBA to keep our borders safe.
But in terms of that, David Cameron used the word swarm about the number of illegal migrants coming towards Calais. Was he right to use that word? And do you detect any sort of swarm of illegal immigrants coming into London and committing some of these crimes?
Well, if you don't mind, Ian, I'm not going to get involved in whether the word swarm is right or wrong. I'm here to police London. And the issues at the border, even in France, are a difficult situation, which I think what we can see is that, we see mass migration from Africa through to Europe, through Italy and Greece, and some of it then arriving in France wanting to get into Britain. So the only thing I can talk about really is where it has an impact on crime.
Okay. Let's go to Lucy, who's in Reigate. Lucy, what's your question?
Well, it's something that's bothered me for a long, long time. Special constables can arrest, but PCSOs can't. And also, you're talking about burglaries that aren't going to be investigated. Surely PCSOs in the local community, why can't they investigate that? You never know what evidence you're going to get from a burglary.
Yeah, well, first of all, Lucy, I don't agree with the chiefs who said that they're not going to investigate burglary. So as far as I'm concerned, whenever I'm in charge of the Met, we will be attending and investigating burglaries. First of all, it's a serious offence. If somebody breaks into your home, I regard that as serious. And secondly, numerically, there aren't that many of them. I mean, in London a day, we have about 130. So in every one of our 32 boroughs, it's about 4. Bearing in mind that there's about 350,000 people live in some of our boroughs. So there aren't that many. And even if we stopped attending them, we wouldn't save much time. So
if you think about the number in, for example, to pick a county at random, Leicestershire, there are probably going to be fewer than that, I would say, because it's generally a rural county apart from Leicester itself. So what do you make of this policy that Leicestershire police have, where they're only going to investigate burglaries that occur in houses with even numbers?
I don't really understand the logic behind it because I've not examined it enough. So obviously I'm sure they'll have made a decision based on some reasoning, but it's not one that I would follow in London.
But it's ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, the general public look at that and they think, have they lost their senses?
You won't mind if, as a professional, I won't comment on another profession. What I can say for definite is that we will not be doing that in London. And to go on to the second part, I think, of Lucy's question here, which is about PCSOs. First of all, certainly in London, we've seen it around the country, we have got far less of them. So we used to have about 5,000. Today we have 1,700. I suspect we'll have less in the future because we are losing money. When CSOs were introduced, one of the benefits is obviously that they continue to walk, talk and meet the public because they don't have powers of arrest. They don't get tied up in police stations. So for me, I wouldn't give them powers of arrest because we want to keep them where we've got them. We want to keep them meeting the public, doing the things that they're very good at, giving good advice, getting information from the public about crime. But I don't think it's wise to start giving them powers of arrest. A special constable is different. They're people who volunteer, take all the risks of being a constable, and we give them the powers when they attend.
OK, let's move on. lbc.co.uk if you'd like to watch us as well as listen to us. Carl is in Orpington. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Ian, and hello, Commissioner.
Good morning, Carl.
To solve the problem of diversity in recruitment and at all levels of police management, could the police not kind of appoint an independent organisation for the purposes of recruiting? Because it will create a kind of transparency. Ethnic minorities. There's allegations that minorities are not being promoted and not being recruited and things like that. But an independent organisation may help to solve some of those problems. Is there any reason why that isn't done?
First of all, it's an option that we've explored. We saw it work in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland outsourced, gave to another company their ability to recruit. I wouldn't do it for promotion, but certainly we're open-minded to that possibility. We do have an awful lot of independence in our present recruitment, Carl. So we have the people who pick our new police officers in London are lay assessors, so they're not police officers. Admittedly, the people we pick but they are independent of the police. We've introduced new things this last year, for which I've been criticised, to have a London residency test. 3 of the last 6 years you need to live in London. More recently, we've had an experiment for a couple of months with a language. If somebody has a language, they'll be drawn forward in the priorities, because we found that gives better representation in our staff.
But aren't you missing out on potentially good police officers who maybe don't have a second language? I mean, that again seems to be a slightly odd policy. How did this experiment work?
Well, all it says is that if you've got a second language, then we will accelerate your promotion, not that we will deny it. Accelerate your recruitment, not that we'll deny it altogether. And you see, for everybody who criticises every option we have, they haven't got a better one. What they say is just go and get more diverse. And frankly, what gets a bit frustrating after a while is all those people who point the finger at the Met and the police, you look down the finger and you see they're even less representative than the Met. So I think we've got a pretty representative workforce. We've got a very good representation at very senior level too, but there's no doubt it could be far better.
You've got a pretty good representative workforce. What percentage of your employees and officers are from ethnic minorities?
Well, on police staff, people who aren't police officers, 1 in 4. On police officers, 12%. On specials, 1 in 4. What's yours here?
12%.
What's yours here?
I've got no idea.
No, I didn't think you would have. Nobody ever has. I bet people like the BBC, they sort of ask all these questions. Journalists ask questions. But when you ask them, well, what's yours? They never know. I know to precise
but we're not
detail.
responsible for policing the streets of London.
But you're not responsible for having a diverse workforce then?
Well, I mean, that's above my pay grade.
Personally.
No, that is above my pay grade. But, I mean, if you look around this building, there are a lot of ethnic minority faces within this building.
Yeah, so there are in my organisation.
If you have 12% of officers who are from ethnic minorities and the population of London is 40%, I don't see how you can say that you're doing particularly well.
I didn't say we're doing particularly well.
I think you did.
No, I didn't. What I'm making the point is, I'm trying to do things, and people like yourself, or people like commentators generally, say I don't like all these ideas. But what's theirs?
Well, I wasn't saying I didn't like them. I was just questioning you.
No, you are. But
that's my
people
role.
do. I'm not having a go at you. My point is, people question it. They question a risk. You are taking a risk in doing that. What they don't have is a better option without risks, is my point.
Tina in Battersea has emailed to say, I've heard the Met are investigating the allegations around former Prime Minister Edward Heath. When did you first hear about the allegations, and are you investigating any other high-profile politicians?
Well, we don't get into detail on ongoing investigations for obvious reasons. Clearly,
even when someone's dead?
Generally, no. Because for the reasons I think actually you commented on, Ian, in terms of your Twitters, we take great care to preserve people's reputation. I think we have to examine thoroughly any investigate or any claim on behalf of a victim, but we also try to be fair to the suspect. So we don't think generally things ongoing. Now, from time to time, when things get into public domain, we're silly to not comment on things. But where we can avoid it, we generally do not comment.
On Edward Heath, I mean, can you tell us when you were first aware of the allegations against him?
I can't give you that detail, I'm afraid, and it wouldn't be wise to do that.
And in terms of what resources you're putting into this, one of the points that I have made over the past couple of days, in that I would prefer more resources putting into catching present-day paedophiles than necessarily putting huge resources into investigating the past. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I don't think potential victims from the past deserve to know the truth, because I think a lot of them... I mean, if you had been abused by a senior politician in the past and you went... The reason that you wouldn't say anything is because you just think you wouldn't be believed. So I think even if it's 20, 30, 40 years on, you do deserve to know the truth. But that's a very difficult balance for you to strike, isn't it?
It is, but what we have said, because what your analysis at the beginning I agree with, so that what we say is that if something happened last night and we've got an immediate threat to an individual, we will deal with it as an urgent matter. If somebody comes about something that's a bit older, we will take a little longer to investigate it. And in terms of your first question, how many officers have we got there? We've got a few thousand officers into present-day inquiries, and we've got a few tens into some of the older inquiries. It is a real challenge. Over the last couple of years, it's been nearly a doubling in the reporting of sexual offences generally. Yeah. About a quarter of that is old stuff. So it's a very significant shift. But we are getting round to them gradually. But we can't guarantee to do it within a matter of hours.
Do you believe it's possible that close protection officers could have been in on any of the abuse if the allegations do turn out to be true? And when I say in on it, I mean protecting the high-profile individual concerned.
Well, you'd have to have an open mind. I mean, that's what an investigator has to have. If evidence came forward then we would have to listen to it. But I don't know. It depends whether or not there was close protection at the time of any allegation. And then the second question is, what did they know about it? Third, were they involved? So we'd always have an open mind to that.
Just finally on this, a few months ago on my Drive Time show, we took 2 calls from 2 ex-police officers, and you're probably aware of them. They alleged that they had investigations closed down by senior officers. This was 20 years ago, and it was regarding Cyril Smith, and they were on the verge of wanting to make an arrest, and they were just told, no, that investigation's over. Now, these 2 officers, obviously, they've signed the Official Secrets Act. Do you think that people like them deserve protection and that they should be able to come forward with their allegations without fear of being prosecuted?
Yeah, well, so generally, I mean, obviously, we now got in a public inquiry.
Yeah.
So I think Lord Justice Goddard has got that opportunity to talk to any witness. It seems to me that the Home Secretary's decision to call that or hold that public inquiry gives exactly that opportunity to anybody who has any information about this type of crime.
Right, let's move on. Luke is in Tooting. Luke, what would you like to ask the Commissioner?
Yeah, good morning.
Morning, Luke.
I think, good morning. No, I think the question is maybe less complicated. I think, I've seen in Tooting twice now a petty theft from a couple of local news agents. Police on the scene, and unfortunately, they just haven't been able to, as it were, catch the robber. So my kind of question is, do you feel that the police on the streets are physically able to deal with, I suppose, the more petty crimes? I know one of the standards to get into the police force is to complete what they call a yo-yo test, which is a fitness test, to a standard of, I think, 5 on that, which the school I teach is something that under 7-year-olds can complete. I just don't know whether we are fit enough, and I mean, I know there's a lot more to policing than just having big muscles and being able to run very far. But I just don't know if we've got that kind of, I suppose, physical presence on the streets. I wonder what you think about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think we have. We do catch quite a lot of people. I'm sometimes amazed by how many people our officers catch, despite the fact they're weighed down with body armour, CS spray and all the rest. But they do catch people. They probably do a bit quicker than I am at the moment. But on the whole, they can catch people. In terms of the general fitness, there is a fitness test. It's not 5. It's actually, I think it's 5. This sounds pedantic, but it's about 5.4 on this scale, and you have to run base for 5 minutes. I did it about a year ago, and I got 7.4 with no training. And I'm not a particularly fit person. I don't pretend to be a particular athlete. So I have said in the past, and I stand by, I think our officers should have a higher level of fitness. But at least over the last couple of years, the government did introduce a new fitness test. It has to be completed annually by every officer, and I support that. I think now we've introduced it, now is the time to hire the bar.
Jim in Reading has texted in saying, what is the protocol when it comes to a drowning person, as what happened to a young lad jumped into the River Lee and got into difficulty? Well, he actually did drown. Did the officers refuse to go in? Because that was how it was reported, wasn't it? Yeah,
I probably can't give too much detail because I know the IPCC are investigating it. I don't want to draw any conclusions from the information I have because I haven't investigated it.
See,
I will come to the question, though.
If you were in that situation...
But let me just come to the question you asked, and then by all means ask a follow-on. So the first thing I think Jim asked was, what's the policy? Well, first of all, clearly we want to be able to try and save somebody who's in the water. But as with the fire brigade in fires, what we don't want officers to do is necessarily put themselves at risk nor other people at risk. So we try and give them training to deal with that in other ways. So can they get a boat? I actually made sure that we equipped all our cars with a throw line. So now all our vehicles have a throw line. You can throw it to somebody if they're within reach, a reasonable distance. And the last option is obviously to get in the water yourself. But there are grave dangers for everybody involved if you go in the water. So generally, we try our best to give reasonable advice and then leave the officer to make a risk assessment at the time. Because otherwise, is it 2-inch deep water? Even at 3-foot deep water, it can be dangerous underwater, as we all know. So I think it's quite difficult.
But I don't think that you would stand by in that situation. I think whatever the risks, you would dive in and do something, wouldn't you?
I think we'd all think we'd do our best, don't we? We all think we'd take that risk. But, a river, which is 15 feet deep, with weeds at the bottom and probably a bike that you don't know about. You're going to get your foot in and you're not going to come out. You get hold of a person who might be struggling and they hit you and you get unconscious and you both go down. These are all possibilities when you're going water. Water is a very dangerous thing. So I think we always hope that we all will do our best and we'll all be very courageous. We encourage our officers to take reasonable risks. Let's have a look, see what this this investigation finds. There are reports that officers didn't take action. The reports also that they did. I think probably best we leave it to the investigators to find out.
Steve is in Battersea. Steve, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Commissioner. I just wanted to find out with the disruption over the weekend with the cyclists, whether that could have been better managed. And I say that simply because I stood on Battersea Bridge for about an hour and a half, and there wasn't a single cyclist that went past. But my God, there were some long queues down the roads.
Yeah, Steve, I didn't see the queues, but I did hear about them. A lot of people seem to get pretty angry over the weekend. Generally, we provide the policing of these events, but we're not responsible for which roads get closed. And I'm not trying to ditch the responsibility, but I'm afraid it's not mine. But I did hear that over the weekend there was quite a lot of concerns about the delays. And I'm sure the people who've organised it and agreed the closures will now be reviewing that.
Just a question on the tube strikes that are going on today. When there is a tube strike day, do you automatically put extra officers onto the streets? I mean, do you worry about sort of the long queues, people's tempers being frayed? Are there more policing challenges on a day like this? Yeah,
what we're trying to do is I mentioned earlier, we've got this partnership with Traffic for London. So we have officers in our Safer Transport Command. So we get as many of those on as possible. We look at, obviously, the hubs where people get onto the buses, and we try and manage where we think the queues are going to get difficult. And you may have seen pictures in the Standard of officers, getting involved there. Going back to your first question, what are we going to do about these cuts? This is just one example of where we end up being the last resort when all the other people go home. When other people withdraw their labour, which I respect, but I'm afraid quite often you fall back on the police to fill the gap. And this is one area. We can't drive the trains, nor should we, but there are consequences.
What's the main challenge that you faced in your time as Commissioner, and how have the challenges changed over those years?
I think it's been a couple of things. I mean, one is that clearly we've talked about, all the time I've been Commissioner, we've had a reduction in money. So I've been in the police long enough, over 30 years, to have had a police service that's kept growing. Public monies get poured into it. You want us to do more, give us more money, we will. Salaries have gone up, to be fair. So that's led to police forces that have, been challenged when the reverse is true. When the money's taken away.
So that's the biggest challenge over the next couple of years, dealing with the financial challenge.
It has been up to now. Don't forget, we've already lost £600 million. We're the only force in the country, the Met, to have lost 15% of our budget and maintained our police numbers. And I'm proud of that, because 42 other forces, with the same proportionate loss, decide to cut police numbers. And I don't agree with that.
So do you think that you will be forced, though, over the next couple of years to reduce police numbers?
We have to be, because at the moment, as I say, we've lost 15% already. The Chancellor's asking for proposals between 25 and 45% more. So 25 and 15 is 40, and you can work the rest out. It's a lot of money. So for us, that may mean something to the order of 800 million to $1 billion. And that means there must be less police.
At what point would you have to get at to say to Theresa May, look, this is risking the safety of Londoners?
Well, I don't think we'll know for certain until we know the amount of money. So I say 800, it could be 690. Let's wait and see what we get or don't get, probably.
But that is a thought going through your mind, that you're heading towards that point.
No, I don't think I'm saying that. I'm saying that, first of all, we've managed to maintain our credibility, I think, up to now. We know some of the challenges, counter-terrorism. We've talked about sexual offence crime, cyber crime, all these things that are growing rather than reducing. When we know the exact amount of money and we know where we can make reasonable savings, we're contracting out. The gentleman asked about contracting out recruitment. We have just contracted out our HR, finance and procurement. There may be other things to do that and save money. So when I know the two things, how much less money will we have? Where can we make reasonable savings? If we get to the position where I'm very concerned, of course, we would talk about it.
Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe is with us for the next 15 minutes. Your calls 0345 6060 973. I'm Ian Dale at breakfast. LBC News Time, it's 8:31. It's 25 to 9 here on LBC. If you go to lbc.co.uk, you can watch us live in HD. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe is with me, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. He's got another 10 minutes or so to take your questions. Let's go to Benjamin, who's in Dagenham. Benjamin, what's your question?
Hi there, Ian.
Hi.
First time calling. Just like to ask the Commissioner, I think it was last week on the show, on one of the shows on LBC, they were asking about cannabis and police force. I can't exactly remember what...
I'll tell you exactly what it was, because it was on my show. We were talking about Durham Police, who've their police commissioner has made the decision that they won't go after people who possess small amounts of cannabis. Now, they justify it on the basis that, well, we haven't got the resources to do that anymore. I think I'm not sure there are any other police forces that are doing this yet, but it's clearly a bit of an experiment. So that's what it was about, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, basically, the police commissioner of the Met, what he thought about that. If they'd done something like that within London, would it give them more time to pursue other issues? Or
good question.
All right, Benjamin. Well, good morning. I was in Havering, I was just saying to Ian, and with a meeting with Barking and Dagenham last night, actually. No, I don't think so. I hate to keep going on saying I don't necessarily agree with some of my colleagues, but I don't really agree with them about this. First of all, we take out cannabis factories. So, there are quite a lot of those now. In fact, we take out about one a day, and that's where people are making lots of money, because these plants, as you know, they will sell for lots of money.
But no one's suggesting that you shouldn't do that. I think what the caller and what Durham Police are saying is, well, if you have sort of a minute amount of cannabis that you sort of smoke yourself from time to time and it's not harming anyone else, we don't regard that as a serious thing anymore.
Well, everything's graded. So, at the moment, it is illegal to possess cannabis. That's the law. I haven't got a right to reinterpret the law. I just have to apply it.
But Durham Police are, aren't they? Durham Police are.
That's their decision. I can only tell you what we're doing. And in terms of how we deal with it, we do deal with it depending on the severity. So, say somebody's got 10 kilos. Well, that's not for personal use. It's probably for profit. Somebody's got a relatively small amount. If it's a first offence, if they have no other possession offences, they are not a criminal by nature, it's more than likely they will get a caution, and should they repeat the offence, they'll go to court. So we try to deal with it appropriate to the circumstances. So the first offence is not, usually leads to an arrest and leads to a charge, but it may lead to a caution.
Nora in Wrexham has texted to say, are you disappointed by the Home Secretary's decision on water cannon? I think we can assume the answer is yes. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you?
Well, if you don't mind, Ian, I'm going to pick my scale rather than yours. Clearly, I argued for it, and to be fair to the Mayor, he took some persuading. It wasn't that he raced to this, but he was...
So it was your recommendation, not his?
Yes, that's quite right. I'd never... we've never said anything else. This was the Metropolitan Police who made the recommendation, first of all, to the now defunct body, the Association of Chief Police Officers. And the Association of Chief Police Officers took it as their policy. And with that policy, we talked to the Mayor, and so he eventually, as I say, accepted the argument. Now, clearly, the Home Secretary hasn't. Now, my reasoning, and I've explained this, a couple of times publicly, was that after in the 2011 riots, when many of us were here, very few of us were in the control room, as I was, having come back to the Met. I was acting deputy at the time before I got this job. Very few people were here in London those 3 days. That first night, had only we been able to stop the rioting we saw in Haringey leaking up into Enfield, suspect the 2 following nights may not have happened. We didn't have enough police there. That was the major problem. We just didn't get enough police there. But the secondary issue, for the poor officers who were there, they spent 8 hours being bricked. They couldn't get out of it. The horses tried to remove the missile throwers, but they got tired and they got tired out. So to have something like this would have given some respite. Now, what I've said all along, it is not the answer, but it is part of an answer. And seeing as in the Northern Ireland they are used quite regularly, seems to me as better than some of the alternatives that might have to be used if we don't have them.
I'm struggling to think of an occasion when a Home Secretary has said no to someone like you on an operational issue.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about
Has she ever said no to you before?
Well, not needed to say yes or no, because there's very little that the Home Secretary or the Mayor gets involved in operationally. Of course, we discuss things, but at the end of the day, I have to take responsibility and accountability for the decisions we make operationally. That's how the Constitution works. But I don't know if any previous Home Secretary has, but in this occasion, obviously, each one of us, I make decisions every day my colleagues don't always agree with, but that's the responsibility we all take.
It's a bit humiliating, isn't it, for the Home Secretary to say no to you?
For me,
yeah,
no. I'll stand my ground. I've not changed my mind.
So you would still like to use them?
Of course.
Presumably that's why
we've not changed our argument.
Presumably that's why you're keeping them. Maybe a future Home Secretary might have a different view.
No, the reason we're keeping them is because we train officers to go and work in Northern Ireland. So, if you take us back probably 20 years, then what was the RUC had probably double the number of officers they have now, and they had the army. But, over the years, it's got better there. But it's not. They still have the marching season, have difficulties. So the reserve now for Northern Ireland are the British mainland police.
So I can't buy one on eBay, that's what you're saying.
So therefore, we have to train our officers to operate with water cannon over there, so we keep it for the training.
Right, let's go to Ram, who's in Watford. Hello, Ram. What's your question?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Morning, Ram.
I had a two-part question, essentially. I work in banking and in a kind of fraud department, and as part of that, I work with a lot of ex-police officers. I've always wanted to be a police officer myself. But having spoken to them, they've all advised that there isn't really a career in policing anymore. It's just a very much a short-time role, and there isn't that job security. And in addition to that, when I spoke to them about the direct superintendent scheme, they all advised also that you wouldn't necessarily get the same level of respect from the police officers if you haven't actually worked your way up from the bottom. So I was just wondering if I could have your thoughts on those, please.
I have to be honest, Ram, and say they're talking complete nonsense in my view. I think it's a fantastic career. There's no doubt that as we get smaller, and Ian and I have talked about having less money will mean less police, and we are having less managers. The potential to progress by promotion has been reduced, but it's still there for people of ability. I'd argue you'd have more stability in a career with the police than you would in banking at the moment, because they seem to be losing people at speed. And in terms of the superintendents we've taken who've not been police officers before, at the moment we've already taken 5, we've just selected another 6. We're finding that they are having the respect of their colleagues. They've not even fully tested yet. They've got a few months before they're exposed to leading people. They're learning the job. They're doing that for about a year. But our experience is they've been very well received. And I'm sure they will do a great job. I'm determined that they'll be given the best chance to do that job because I think they're really talented people.
Ram, thank you very much indeed. Dave in Newcastle says, since the Tunisia attack, could London face a similar attack here?
Well, in terms of the terrorist threat, at the moment, the threat level is called severe. Now, what that means is that an attack is highly likely, but we've no specific intelligence about some attackers who will attack at a particular time.
Is that the second level?
Yeah, the second highest. Yeah. So the top is critical.
Right.
So we're not there. That's usually when you know that 3 people named are out there trying to attack a particular target. So this is only the level below that. So clearly there's a risk. It's clearly one of the things that we try and stop. So we gather intelligence. We've made lots of arrests over the last year. I think we've made an arrest nearly every day around the country for terrorism. So it's a serious concern. And it's clearly one of the scenarios we planned for. People in London will have seen that we had an exercise only about 6 weeks ago, where we were practicing for this type of incident.
Do you know, on that, I was walking across Lambeth Bridge and I heard sort of gunfire, and I was just about to phone LBC's newsroom to say something's going on. I thought, no, there's an exercise going on.
Yeah, well, there was a part of the exercise was down there, and one of the things we've got to get the balance right. If we do these exercises in public, it can worry the public, but equally it can make them realise there are risks there, and hopefully make them think for themselves, if this type of thing happened, how would they respond?
Are you able to tell us roughly how many attacks have been foiled, say, in the last 6 months?
Well, probably the main indicator we can give is over the last year we've interrupted, we think, about 5 different operations that people are now in the process of being prosecuted for. So that's an increase because probably we had about 1 a year in previous years.
I mean, I know you can't go into detail, but how serious were these? I mean, were they operations that could have potentially resulted in the loss of a lot of lives?
Yes, there were life-threatening things that had we not intervened, and obviously we work hand in hand with the security service, I'm sure people would have got hurt.
And when you look at the demographics of the people that are arrested on suspicion of these crimes, are they all from a sort of younger age group, or is it a real mix?
Generally younger. In fact, you may have seen in the Northwest, we saw a young boy of only 14 a few weeks ago, and that's a case that's now pending court. But you're generally talking about younger people, and as we've seen lots of younger people going to Syria, not less so Iraq, but certainly going over to Syria, and sadly with children, which I find impossible to understand.
Yeah. Just a quick and finally question from Pat, who says, can Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe speak 2 languages?
Yorkshire and English.
Good answer.
No, I have to admit I can't. In fact, I said I was at a meeting last night in Havering. We have a public meet every few weeks, and we invite the public to come and say whether they agree with the Met or not. And I was challenged in this area. First of all, surely you, Commissioner, wouldn't have even been selected. Well, some people might have thought that was a good idea. Yes, it's quite right. I can't speak another language. I wish I could. I think I'm deficient because I can't. I admire the continental Europeans who routinely speak English, but I can't.
All I would say is, wir bedanken Ihnen sehr herzlich.
Danke.
Very good. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
What do you have to say to them?
And they are understandably furious, because I think the thing is ridiculous, and it is
what exactly is ridiculous, Mr. Mayor?
Strike. And I think the proposal for industrial action, which I hope very much will be withdrawn, I do hope that